Welcome to Laconic, a channel where we talk about street photography, documentary photography, social and even sociological photography. All of these feed off each other. We talk about photography without prejudice, photos born of silence and contemplation. We're talking about photographic zen and impersonal witness. If that makes your mouth water, you are at home on Laconic. A photograph is worth 1,000 words, but life is full of contradictions to be overcome. So we're going to talk a lot on Laconic. We're going to comment on images so that we can understand them better, appreciate them more, and love taking photographs even more. Plate 1. I love this photograph. It's one of my favorite photos. I feel lucky to have taken it. I've been looking at it from time to time for years now, and I never tire of it. So what are we talking about today with this image? It's 2016 at the Prix de Diane horse races in Chantilly. It's an international horse racing event that doubles as a kind of friendly elegance contest where hats are the accessory of choice. Although it is an event where beautiful horses owned by wealthy people race, the atmosphere is relaxed and charming, and everyone is welcome. This beautiful event is neither selective or exclusive. That deserves to be applauded. Nevertheless, the women do not fail to wear classic elegant outfits and their best hats for the occasion. This is what I was looking for in my approach to photographic zen. There's much to be said about the virtues of clothing, its power of sociological expression, and its intimate and real relationship to the very ontology of the contemporary individual. Some people think that clothing is superficial, that you can't judge a book by its cover. Well, they are wrong. Let me explain. Adopting the standard attire of the masses, without elegance, without personality, without genius, without audacity, and even without choice, is the 0 degree of subjectivity. Yet, subjectivity is you and me. That is all we are. Individuals who embrace conformism have no personal world. They adopt the mediocre offerings of a consumer society that is running out of steam and renounce their almost sacred duty to embody their own subjectivity, their personal being. To put it simply, clothing today has become for masses of individuals one of the instruments of their renunciation of being as a subjective, singular, potential, unique, free personality. So, no, clothing is not superficial. It is your depth coming to the surface. But let's get back to the Prix de Diane and our hats. On that beautiful June day, I was, so to speak, in full photographic zen, enthused by the venue, delighted by the atmosphere and the immense variety of photographic opportunities. So I contented myself with wandering along the stands, watching all these charming people whose pleasant outfits made them even more amiable. I quietly shared in the enjoyment of the day, exchanging glances and smiles, while remaining very focused. In fact, I had paid for my ticket not to watch the races, but to get the photographs I was interested in. Here is how it works. The race is announced. Shortly afterwards, it starts and lasts only a few minutes. At the end of the race, when the horses are in the last few dozen meters before the finish line, the excitement is at its peak. The crowd is overexcited. Their attention captured by the spectacle, and they pay little attention to the photographers. It is then possible to take advantage of these moments to take remarkable photographs. But you have to be very focused. This is where a form of zen or detachment from the situation comes into play. It was during one of these intense moments that I took this photograph. A woman is in the center of the image, in the foreground. She has a classic, very understated style. She is wearing a wide-brimmed hat with a wavy line that gives her a very special elegance. I believe that this irregular, elliptical shape is an essential part of the image's charm. If a hat was simply round, the image would be completely different and probably less interesting. What's more, its shape is isolated from the other subjects in the frame. The hat has its own space and remains untouched by any pollution from other elements. These are subtle observations, but I believe they are essential if we are to understand what makes a photograph move us. Furthermore, this woman is under her hat, almost as if under a parasol, isolated from other people. She gives me the impression of being alone in the world, in this crowd. An impression I like because the apparent solitude conveys a sense of singular depth. The idea that the person has more inner life, that she lives in her own world. Of course, the other important element is her gaze, which she directs into the distance and seems to observe other, less mundane horizons. Behind her, however, are two older women who are looking me up and down and wondering about me, about what I am doing. They give me the impression of being my censors, character that the artist is bound to encounter on his path. Those who stray from the beaten path, from conventional attitudes, who create something new, through their audacity, are systematically labeled as depraved, potentially considered monsters. They are attributed with most sinister and guilty intentions. To take this kind of candid shot, I used a specific setting on my lens, zone focus, coupled with a fast shutter speed of 1/200th of a second or more. If you close the aperture of a 28mm lens to f8 and set the focus ring to 2 meters, your photograph will be reasonably sharp over an area of 1.30 m to approximately 5.30 m in front of the camera. A table of these specifications can be found in your lenses manuals. Now, you can disengage your autofocus system and not worry about it anymore. You can focus solely on your frame, the moment, the composition. You can dream in peace and shoot in the blink of an eye. This is called zone focus. The artistic or conceptual process used here to obtain lively and natural portraits of people is that of off-frame or off-camera photography. This means that you do not photograph the action that is taking place, but instead turn your back on it. You look in the opposite direction to the mesmerized crowd. Isn't that already highly symbolic? You observe those who are watching. You will find these photo opportunities at events or in places of contemplation, such as museums or places that should be museums. If you are bold enough, if you feel like it, you can take advantage of these circumstances to perhaps create remarkable images that will tell something special, unique, non-conformist. Images that point you towards something authentically human, beyond social rigidity, blockages, and confinement. But remember that this is not easy, and that well-behaved people will call you crazy and shoot you a death stare. Plate 2. The initiatory log. The scene takes place in the Jardin des Tuileries, during the funfair held there every year from June to August. We walk past the attraction commonly known as the logs, or the log ride. 6 young Chinese girls are about to climb the waterfall, and the expressions on their faces catch my attention. We are spectators at the beginning of a moment of adventure and thrill. This spectacle can be read, decoded, and interpreted, because the life of a street photographer sometimes provides us with imagery that we must translate. In ancient times, there were mysteries, that is to say, profound religious festivals that included trials and rites of passage, initiations. People emerged from these experiences transformed, having reached a higher level of maturity. They implied a before and an after. In the Middle Ages, there was still the profound mystical quest, in which a knight set out on a journey committing himself to facing all the trials of a journey towards a mysterious object, the materialization of its ideal. A sacred cup, for example, which the mere sight of would enlighten his mind. But the road was fraught with difficult passages, perilous bridges, dizzying climbs, tumbles, uncertain journeys in canoes, nighttime crossings of forests populated by countless invisible creatures, encounters with spells and magical phenomena. I believe that this is what funfairs tell us through vestiges, survivals, distorted memories, whose meaning we have forgotten. With these ideas in mind, the photograph of the young girls in the log takes a more amusing and poignant tone. after all? Aren't they young Chinese tourists boldly venturing into a forest of fairground rides in a land that is not their own? What's more, they are preparing to climb to a height to dive into an imaginary turbulent river aboard a log. Of course, all this is largely under control. The risk-taking is limited, symbolic, but the approach, the gesture is there. The upright, firm, half-serious, half-playful attitude of the first girl, who remarkably holds the position and posture of the courageous leader of the expedition, is testimony of it. Unconsciously, we are playing here with the great affair, with the great trials of life, with the question of life and death, dear to the masters of then. You are looking at an ancestral initiation, right? In a weakened and degraded symbolic form. You are the spectator of the trial of fear, which can be approached with the perfect mixture of seriousness and amused smiles. Plate number 3. Cat glasses. In a sense, and at first glance, there's nothing particularly special about this photograph. There's no striking punctum. However, it has a story that deserves to be told if we want to understand the photography we're talking about. This photography is known as street photography, but in fact consists of photographing people in their social environment and, when possible, if possible, in unique settings, in distinctive clubs that are sometimes difficult to access, but which hide other faces of human nature. We are in the realm of sociological reporting without pretension or prejudice, documenting everyday life, including the magical moments that fashion encounters can provide. Paris Fashion Week in 2015. SS16 for spring-summer. What's fun and challenging is that the locations of the presentations are kept secret, and access is by invitation or guest list only. However, most of the shows take place in the central districts of Paris. What's more, the week's schedule is packed, and fashion columnists, fashionistas, and enthusiasts often walk from place to place to save time. So, basically, by observing where the most stylish people are heading and keeping a sharp eye out, it is possible to spot the temples of fashion design. There are also some great classics, such as the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. That's where we are, at the Beaux-Arts, probably in the glass courtyard or another room, but all the surfaces have been covered with white panels at the designer's request. In a few minutes, the show by renowned fashion designer Hussein Chalayan will begin. I have chosen to comment on this seemingly mundane image, not because it is visually extraordinary, but rather because of what it cost me and its story. I had decided that I would manage to take photographs during Fashion Week. A fascinating, distinctive, closed, almost inaccessible Parisian event. What's more, I had a friend in the fashion industry who invariably refused to invite me to the shows, which stung my pride and strengthened my motivation to succeed at all costs. My plan was to arrive on the scene with a camera, of course, to appear stressed and overwhelmed, as fashion people often are, and to push my way through security. In fact, it worked very well. All you have to do is pretend to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I even allowed myself the luxury of wandering around the space, ignoring the photographer's area, where the pros are confined to a few square meters. Moments after this photograph was taken, the show's manager spotted me and asked, "Who are you? What do you do?" To which I replied, lying like a dentist, that I was taking pictures for Elle Belgium magazine. Surprisingly, that answer was enough for him, and he didn't ask me any more questions. These moments are extraordinary adrenaline rushes. No one wants to suffer the humiliation of being thrown out like a piece of rubbish by security a few minutes before the magic of a fashion show. The photo documents the kind of audience at these events. For many of the spectators in the front rows, it is important to be the center of attention. Quite naively, this spectator's rainbow cat-eye glasses caught my eye. I found it interesting to show the quirky and cheerful glamour of certain personalities. The attention of the photographers is appreciated by this pretty woman and rewarded with meaningful glances. Exchanging glances is part of documentary photography and must be handled with diplomacy, modesty, and without excess. In other words, it is sometimes necessary to look at strangers. You can thank them with a modest smile when they have graciously allowed themselves to be photographed. But it's better to move on quickly, to avoid your photographic interest being interpreted as personal interest. If you look at the image closely, you will notice that it shows multiple people whose gazes are pointing in all directions. There's a man staring into space. A woman on the right, her eyes fixed on the floor, seems to be looking inward. And then there is our protagonist, whose stylish appearance, jewelry, and slightly extravagant glasses set her apart. She, alone, is looking directly at the camera and smiling. Her gaze seems fixed on the camera pointing at her, isolating her from the rest of the scene in a disturbing visual exchange. The other people are engaged in conversations, indifferent to my presence. I find that this is what makes the image so charming. It is because of this discrepancy and the effort it took me to capture it that I love it. This photograph is about the gaze, but not the gaze that looks, rather the gaze that demands to be looked at.